lantern flickers in the silence, its trembling flame clawing at the walls of stone. The air is thick with the reek of smoke and damp mortar, incense mingling with the faint rot of mildew. Shadows stretch and shiver across the vaulted ceiling as a figure steps forward, the sound of leather soles striking flagstones echoing like a dirge. His cloak carries the weight of judgment, stitched with a yellow cross that glows faintly in the unsteady light. Once just a symbol of faith, now it is a brand of accusation, a mark placed upon those condemned to be both present and absent, seen and erased. Each thread burns like fire against the darkness, condemning all it touches. Beyond this flickering threshold, a woman kneels. Her face is hollow, eyes ringed with sleepless dread. She is a peasant, torn from the meadows of her home, dragged here on whispers of heresy, accused of sheltering the Cathar creed. Her voice trembles with the memory of blossoms swaying in sunlight, of goats grazing among thyme and rosemary, of bread still warm from her own hearth. But the meadow is gone, replaced with stone that oozes cold into her bones. The taste of ash lingers on her lips. Behind her, men in woolen robes watch, their eyes unblinking, their hands folded like angels carved in marble. They do not see her as daughter or mother or wife. She is already a shadow, stripped of name, bound only to the judgment of this chamber. The Inquisitor's voice cuts the silence. Low, deliberate, woven with Latin that rises like smoke. Confess. The word is both command and curse, hovering in the air like a knife. The woman's breath falters. She feels the straw of a rosary pressed into her palm, coarse against her skin, as though the straw itself knows it is a lie. The rosary was thrust upon her in penance, a reminder that salvation is tethered to obedience. Her lips move, but no words escape, only the fragile exhale of a life caught between memory and annihilation. Above them, torches sputter. Wax drips like blood along iron sconces. Somewhere deep in the stone, a chain rattles, faint but insistent, like the heartbeat of a hidden prisoner. The sound drags her into the present, forcing her to hear what lies beyond her silence. She knows the chamber of torment waits beneath, with its straps of leather and wheels of rope, with its iron pincers warmed in flame. She has heard the cries in the night, muffled yet piercing, carried on drafts of smoke. She has smelled the scorched flesh before dawn. She has prayed not to follow those voices, yet knows she will. The Inquisitor leans forward. His breath carries wine and incense, sanctified yet sour. Do you persist in error? His quill hovers above parchment, ready to record her soul's betrayal. Each mark on the vellum is a sentence, binding not only her, but her children, her kin, her village, to suspicion. Confession is both survival and ruin. Silence both shield and noose. Her heart pounds as though it might burst against her ribs. She sees her father's face, weathered and kind, teaching her to weave linen beneath a sunlit roof. She hears his voice. Faith is not in buildings, but in kindness. Now, in this chamber, kindness has no voice. A bell tolls outside, low and mournful, carrying across the cloister. It shakes dust from beams, rattles shutters, reminds the world of order beyond these walls. With each chime, she feels herself dissolve further, her name thinning like smoke. Each strike of bronze is another step away from the meadow, another note sealing her fate. Her lips quiver, words come unbidden, fractured and incomplete. I believe. She falters, her confession unraveling into silence. The Inquisitor's quill scratches anyway, inscribing guilt with the certainty of divine decree. The sound of ink on vellum is crueler than iron. It is permanent, a wound that will not close. The guards move closer, their boots grinding straw into dust. One lifts a torch, its flame bright enough to sear her eyes. The smoke claws at her throat. She coughs, and the sound echoes through the vaulted chamber like a verdict. Hands seize her arms, calloused fingers gripping with the authority of law. She does not resist, for resistance is futile, and she has learned that stillness is the last dignity left to the condemned. Her eyes fall to the floor, where a single feather lies, black, torn from a crow that must have slipped through a window above. The feather trembles in the draft, a fragile testament of freedom just out of reach. As they lead her away, she glances once more at the yellow cross. It hangs like a curse on the cloak before her, swaying with each step, glowing faintly in the gloom. To wear it is shame. To see it is judgment. It is a cloak of memory and forgetting, branding those who fall beneath its shadow. She wonders if her own children will one day bear the same cross, stitched not in fabric but in silence, carrying the stigma of her name. The door creaks open, letting in a breath of cold night. The air outside smells of frost and wet earth, a sharp reminder of the world she is losing. The courtyard waits, silent but not empty. Beyond the gate, she glimpses torches swaying in the hands of the watch, their flames smudging the stars. She hears the faint rustle of wings as a raven circles above, its cry piercing the darkness. Her bare feet touch the cobblestones, and she shivers as the stones leach warmth from her flesh. Each step is a farewell to the life she once knew. In the distance, the pyre looms, its timber stacked in cruel precision. She knows this will not be her end, not yet, but its shadow lengthens over her, a reminder that fire is the final arbiter for those who resist. Tonight, she is spared. Tonight, she will be returned to the cell, the damp straw, the endless night. But tomorrow, or the next, she may walk the path of smoke. She clutches the straw rosary tighter, its brittle stems snapping in her fist. They crumble like bones. As the guards drag her into the courtyard, the bell tolls again, louder now, vibrating through her ribs. The sound is not of deliverance, but of burial, each note hammering down like dirt upon a coffin. She raises her eyes, catching sight of the moon veiled in thin cloud. The veil glows faintly, a shroud stretched across the sky. For a moment, it feels like a mirror of her own fate, covered, muted, obscured, yet still burning faintly beneath. She inhales the cold night air as though it is the last taste of freedom she will ever know. The door behind her slams shut, sealing her from the chamber of judgment. Yet the echo of the bell lingers, binding her to the silence that comes. In that silence, she no longer knows if she is guilty or innocent, believer or heretic, living or dead. She is a name written on vellum, a shadow bearing a yellow cross, a voice swallowed by stone. And as the bell's final echo fades into the night, it does not vanish. It opens, like a threshold, into a deeper darkness. The darkness where the story of faith and fire will descend further, into the chambers beneath the earth, where ropes creak, iron burns, and silence itself learns to scream. The first light of dawn slips through a narrow window, thin as a blade, carving pale shafts into the darkness of the cell. Dust hangs in the beam like ash suspended in still air. A man kneels on the frozen stone, his body bowed, his tunic damp with the cold sweat of the night. The air is thick with the stench of rotting wood, urine in the straw, and the faint tang of scorched parchment left on the floor. His wrists bear fresh welts, raw grooves left by cords pulled too tight. Each movement sends a jolt of fire up his arms. He winces but does not speak. The silence is his only shield. He is an artisan, once proud, once steady, once needed. His hands shaped rosaries from oak and pine, beads smooth as river stones polished with oil and devotion. The hands that once created prayer are now stripped of purpose. Their memory clings to him even here, a cruel reminder of the life confiscated with his accusation. He tastes iron in his mouth, not from the chains, but from the memory of splinters pressed into his gums when he bit back his cries under the lash. He lowers his head to the stone, as if seeking comfort in the cold hardness. But the stone offers nothing but indifference. The murmurs seep through the walls, low voices of friars reciting prayers in Latin. Their tones rise and fall like distant waves, detached, untroubled. They chant as though this chamber of suffering is a chapel, as though his agony sanctifies the air. He wonders if God hears them, or if heaven has long since turned its face away from these walls. A thought intrudes, unwelcome but sharp. Perhaps God has been replaced by parchment, by seals, by men whose pens decide the worth of souls. He shudders and presses his forehead deeper into the stone to drive the thought away. But it lingers, heavy and accusing. Beyond the cell, footsteps resound, measured, deliberate, like drums before a march. A key turns in iron. The door yawns open, spilling in a draught heavy with moss and rain. The Inquisitor does not enter, only gestures. A guard approaches, the stink of sweat and leather surrounding him. The artisan rises slowly, every muscle resisting, but obedience is carved into his bones now. His knees wobble as the guard pulls him to his feet. The torchlight outside the cell sears his eyes. He stumbles, guided by hands that do not care if he stands or falls, only that he moves forward. The corridor is narrow, the walls slick with condensation. As he passes, he catches glimpses of other doors, each one breathing silence, each one concealing another shadow like him. He wonders if those shadows pray as he does, if their memories bleed into the walls. The torches sputter, smoke curling against the ceiling. Somewhere above, a bell tolls, the morning call to prayer. Its resonance shakes the corridor, reminding him that time still flows, that the world outside still spins in its rituals. But for him, time is reduced to one rhythm, the pace of his steps, the drag of chains, the echo of his breath. They emerge into a courtyard bathed in cold light. Dew clings to the cobblestones, shimmering faintly before vanishing beneath boots. The air tastes cleaner here, laced with damp earth and the faint aroma of cooking fires from distant kitchens. But the courtyard itself is silent, a hollow pause in the day. At its center looms the pyre, wood stacked with deliberate precision, each log placed not as fuel but as testimony. It is not just timber. It is parchment transcribed into flame, each ember a word, each spark a judgment. He feels its shadow settle over him, though today is not yet his turn. He is led to a wooden stool set before a panel of robed men. Their faces are blurred by hoods, their voices low but firm. The Inquisitor clears his throat. His words roll slowly, shaped like law, but they cut like knives. You stand accused of heresy, of spreading errors among the faithful. Your confession will spare your soul, if not your body. The artisan's lips tremble, his voice cracked from disuse. He wants to speak of wood shavings curling beneath his knife, of the way pine releases its resin scent under his hand, of how prayer can be carved as well as spoken. But such words have no place here. Instead, he stares at his wrists, raw and red, and whispers what they want to hear. I confess. The words fall flat, heavy, hollow. They do not save him, but they are all he has left. The quill scratches against parchment, recording not his truth, but their version of it. His name is tethered forever to guilt, each letter inked in betrayal. The scribes write without looking at him, as if he has already ceased to exist. The guard tightens his grip on his shoulder. The artisan lowers his head, ashamed not of belief, but of surrender. The council disperses. No words of mercy, no blessing, only the rustle of robes retreating. The stool creaks as he stands again. The pyre watches him, its wood silent but waiting. He imagines it already crackling, flames licking upward, swallowing the last of his name. He sees his wife's face in the smoke, her lullaby drifting through the haze. He remembers the fields of barley at harvest, the laughter of children running through stalks taller than themselves. He swallows hard, choking back the image before it drowns him. The guard pulls him toward the gate. The morning sun rises higher, casting long shadows that cut across the courtyard like scars. The pyre's shadow falls upon him once more as he crosses the stones. He shivers, though the air is warming. A raven calls from the roof, its cry slicing the silence. He looks up, and for an instant, the bird seems to watch him, black eyes unblinking. He wonders if it carries the souls of the condemned, if its wings are heavy with the ashes of confession. The thought comforts him strangely, as if he will not vanish entirely. The gate creaks open, and he is thrust back into the narrow corridor. Darkness swallows him again. The damp smell of stone, the hiss of dripping water, the rattle of chains, these are the hymns of his new existence. He returns to the cell, to the straw, to the silence that will cradle him until the end. But tonight, when the wind shifts, he knows the pyre will speak. Its crackle will carry through the walls, through the cracks in stone, carrying with it the name of another condemned soul. And when that ash drifts into the air, he will breathe it and know he is not alone. The door slams, the lantern flickers. He kneels once more, folding into the cold stone. His lips whisper a prayer, but he cannot tell if it is to God, to the earth, or to the silence itself. His eyes close. In the darkness behind them, he sees fire. And as he drifts into that vision, the boundary between guilt and innocence dissolves. Only ashes remain. Ashes and the faint memory of a song once sung in joy. When the bell tolls again, it will not be for prayer. It will summon the shadows below, where chains clatter, ropes creak, and silence begins to scream. Dawn slides its blade through the slit of the window and carves a line of cold light across the floor. Dust lifts in that pale wound, each mote a wandering ember from a fire that has not yet burned. He kneels where the stone presses its chill into his bones, palms open to the grit, wrists raw and salted by sweat. The straw stiffens under him, sour with night, and the breath of other men who have knelt here before and left nothing behind but loosened fibers and the ghost of a prayer. He listens for the hour, But the bell is late, and the silence feels like a mouth held shut. He is a craftsman by habit more than memory now. Fingers that once coaxed curves from oak as clean as river stones, beads that warmed under thumb and gathered the oil of 1,000 whispered Ave Marias. He can still feel the knife's haft in his palm, walnut polished by years, and the rasp's bite singing along the grain. He can still hear the breath of pine when a new bead turned, the soft resin sigh. Those sounds do not reach this cell, where everything is damp and iron, and the drag of leather across a buckle. Here, wood is only the door. Here, hands are only for binding. Footsteps pass beyond the wall, steady as a rosary ticking bead to bead. Latin drifts in, thin as smoke. Damen, non sum dignus. He repeats it under his breath, not as consent, but as rhythm. The words a rope to keep him from sinking beneath his own weight. He wonders if the monks can taste the moss in the air the way he does, that green bitterness that grows in places where the sun cannot reach. He wonders if they smell the parchment when the clerk warms the quill, that faint tang of skin turned into law. The lock turns with a small, satisfied sound, and the door opens on a square of cold brightness. A guard stands framed in it, eyes already elsewhere, hand already out. The strap hisses as it slides from the hook. He does not fight. There are fights left in other rooms. In this one, dignity is the only weapon, and it is blunt. He rises into the chill and follows, the iron kiss of the chain tapping lightly against his ankle, a metronome for fear. The corridor swallows him whole, its stones sweating with the night that the sun will never reach. Torches bruise the air with smoke, and the soot on the vault's curve looks like old rain. They pass doors that breathe, doors with lips of iron, doors that hold the names of men he will never know gritted between their teeth. Somewhere a bucket scrapes and a cough gnaws at a throat, and a prayer catches on the word that will not come. He thinks absurdly of barley bending under wind, the silver whisper of it, the way the fields around their village bowed and rose like a congregation. He thinks of his wife's hands rinsing bowls with cold well water, how she would lift the edge of her apron to blot her fingers, the linen leaving a bright, damp crescent. He holds that shape in his mind, the way one might hold a candle cupped from the wind. They step into the courtyard, and the world suddenly has a sky again. It is white today, a veil thrown over a face yet to be revealed. The stones bear dew still in their seams, each droplet a quivering coin the sun will take for itself. The air smells of ash quenched hours before, and the faintest animal note from the pens beyond the wall, sheep or goats rustling in straw, indifferent to creed. On the far side, stacked like careful thought, stands the wood. Fresh-cut oak and hornbeam, a smudge of sap at one end, the saw's mark like a scar. The pyre is not for him, not yet. But it stands like a word someone will eventually force him to say. They seat him on a stool before the panel. A table breathes under parchment, quills wait like thin beaks. A seal warms near a candle that smokes where a wick drowned itself earlier and had to be coaxed back into flame. The Inquisitor's hood makes a cave of his face, shadow-swallowing expression, and only his mouth moves, shaping ritual into order. The clerk wets the quill. The guard rests a hand like a weight on his shoulder. Name. It is a question that sounds like a verdict. He gives it, quietly, as if the less breath he wastes on it, the longer it will last. You have been named, the mouth in the hood replies, as one who spreads error among the faithful, who murmurs in workshops and doorways that grace may be bought without the priest, that God listens in the orchard as easily as in the nave. The words do not accuse him of hate. They accuse him of a simpler treason, speaking to God without a license. He thinks of the beads he shaped, how the simple slide of thumb on wood taught patience to men who had never read a letter. He thinks, if there is error, it is made by hands like mine, and then he bites his tongue, for thought can leak sometimes like sap. Confess, the Inquisitor says, and it is not shouted, only placed into the air like a stone falling. The clerk's quill lifts. The page waits. The page is merciless. The page does not hear or forgive. It only remembers. He tells them what he knows they want, that he listened in the market to men who spoke of a church that was not a courthouse, that he nodded once, perhaps twice, that in the dimness of a winter afternoon, in the smell of boiled cabbage and smoke, he heard a prayer without Latin. He lets the words arrange themselves in the pattern they have prepared. It is not truth. It is a scaffolding built for a sentence to climb. The quill scratches its small fire into the skin. His name is hitched to errors he did not weigh and now cannot pry loose. The seal lifts and falls. Wax puddles like blood. A ribbon threads through the hole. The parchment is bound as tightly as he is. When they are done with him, for now, the guard's hand implies with a small companionable squeeze, they make a show of mercy. The Inquisitor nods toward the chapel door. Someone mutters that confession has softened his case. Someone else asks after the price of oil and wine in the records, the accounting that nails grace to a ledger. The clerk answers in numbers without shame. There are always lists. There are always numbers. Faith must show its sums. They let him stand. The stool's groan relieves the wood. He turns because there is nothing else to turn to, and his eyes snag on the pyre again. The sets of logs are like the teeth of a comb laid on its side, waiting to rake through what remains human in those who climb. He remembers how he would align beads by the dozen on twine, checking the space between each with a fingernail, making order that felt like prayer. He wonders who measured this wood, who decided the gap between each spar, whether the man who stacked it went home to bread and found himself counting logs in his sleep. The thought nauseates him, and he swallows hard until the taste of bile is only a threat. The bell finally finds its voice. It swings above him unseen, the rope somewhere pulled by hands that do not know his name. The sound steps down the walls, through the ribs, into the marrow. Morning, it says, in the tongue that metals speak. Morning, and nothing else. He lets it pass through him the way wind passes through wheat when it is tired of standing and needs to bend or break. Back through the corridor, back through the breath of stone. The door accepts him like a habit. The lock coughs and clears its throat and settles. He lowers himself to the floor as if he were returning to a bench in his shop after a pause to greet a neighbor. The familiarity appalls him. The straw prickles his calves. He can count his own heartbeat again. He can hear the drip in the corner find a dish, patient as a monk. He can, now that it is too late, finally speak to himself. You told them. You offered a shape they could nail you to. And yet, once spoken, the words float around him like ash, refusing to land. He thinks of shearing wool in spring, the lanolin darkening the palms, the sheep's smell ancient and good. He thinks of the little boy who came once to his shop with a cracked rosary, beads strung crooked, the cord stained where a mother had cried over it. He fixed it, realigned the imperfections, and the child's face had steadied as if the world itself had straightened a little. What would he straighten now, given a knife and a plank of time? He would not recant the meadow, nor the prayer whispered while mending a fence, nor the way his wife sang under her breath when she kneaded dough. He would not give those things to the parchment. They are not the courts to keep. Evening will come. He knows the day like he knows wood, how it cleaves and how it resists. Evening will carry the crackle of what is stacked outside. Smoke will finger the air through the cracks, sweet at first, like apple wood, then bitter as pitch. It will sneak into his hair and nest there and declare him a man already half burned. He will taste it for hours afterwards when there is no fire left to warm him. He will murmur a name he has never spoken, someone else's, because ash carries memory as if it were seed. Between now and then, there is a stretch of light that will not touch the floor, the narrow river that keeps to the wall. In it, he places a small thing he has not confessed, a splinter he hid beneath his tongue when they searched him last, caught from the stool's underside as if by accident. He works it free now and presses it under his thumb, and the pain that answers is honest. He imagines the bead it might become if time were different and the world were merciful. A single sphere from a saint's poor rosary, smooth enough to remember joy. He circles it with the pad of his thumb. There is no curve, only the idea of one, and breathes until his heart steadies. Somewhere above, a rook complains, that dry voice of thresholds. Footsteps pass again. Keys clatter and kiss. The day moves like a procession in the street, very slowly, with banners he cannot see. He closes his eyes and watches the path of the bell's next toll reach him across the courtyard and slip under the door and climb his spine. He knows what it will summon. Not him. Not yet. But someone nearby whose breath he has heard and whose name he never learned. He opens his hand and lets the splinter rest in the crease of his palm like a relic. When the bell finally speaks, it is softer than before, as if the metal is tired of its own voice. He rises to his knees at its bidding, because that is what his body knows to do. The air shifts, wind corrals the smoke toward him. The straw rustles without cause, like hair touched by a hand that is not there. He waits. The first hush after the bell is always the longest, and in that space a thought forms, careful as a bead drilled without splitting. A man can be reduced to ash by fire, and a man can be reduced to ash by ink, and only one of those leaves warmth. He tucks the thought away where no hand can find it. Darkness gathers on the edge of the light like a cloak someone draws over shoulders. Practical. Inevitable. The corridor mutters. A lock somewhere protests then yields. He wets his lips and finds the taste of resin that is not there, and he smiles, a small cracked thing that belongs to no one. The night will bring its procession to the yard. The ropes creak, the priests mutter, the scrape of boots taking their leave. He will listen. He will breathe what they become. He will keep their names without having them. And when the door opens for him again, when they lead him down not to the panel but to the room beneath where wood has no patience and rope has a voice, he will carry the single truth that has survived the quill, that in the grain of a man there runs a stubborn line that only love or flame can alter. He turns the splinter once more, carving nothing, shaping nothing, finding there the edge of a prayer that has never needed Latin to be heard. Candles shiver in the cavernous hall, each flame leaning as if to whisper secrets it cannot keep. Smoke curls upward, staining the ribs of the vault where centuries of prayers have blackened the stone. Quills rest in shallow bowls, their tips dry, their ink congealed to a crust that smells faintly of vinegar and soot. The room is not empty. It breathes with silence too watchful, as if the walls themselves lean in to hear. In the center, she sits, a young novice, hardly past girlhood, draped in a veil that smothers her hair but cannot hide the tremor of her hands. Before her, a sheet of vellum lies smoothed beneath stone weights, its pale skin stretched like the flank of a beast prepared for sacrifice. She holds the quill too tightly, the feather trembling in rhythm with her pulse. She dips it into the ink, dark and viscous, and lowers it to the forbidden text laid before her. Words outlawed, words hunted, words that, once spoken, could burn her alive. The letters rise like specters, crude Latin scribbled by men already ash. Lux vera non in templis, said in chord. The true light not in temples, but in the heart. She copies them slowly, carefully, each stroke of ink a heartbeat stolen from God's appointed order. The quill scratches against the skin of the parchment, the sound thin and rasping, like a whisper through a keyhole. She listens to that sound as though it is her own voice daring to speak in the darkness. Outside, the wind drags through the cloister, rattling the olive branches in the courtyard. Their fragrance seeps into the room, mingling with the sharp tang of ink. She remembers the fields of her childhood, lavender and hay carried on the breeze, and her mother's voice calling her home as dusk fell. Those memories burn brighter in this place where no meadow grows, where the only fields are the margins of vellum and the only harvest is fear. She bends lower, her lips moving silently with each word, as if committing them not only to page but to flesh. The door groans. Its iron hinges moan like something ancient waking. She freezes, the quill hovering above the parchment, ink dripping like blood onto the margin. A shadow lengthens across the page, swallowing the words she has dared to write. The prioress enters, her figure cloaked in black, the hem of her habit brushing against the stones with the sound of dry leaves. She does not speak. She does not need to. Her silence is the sound of judgment. The novice lowers her eyes, staring at the drop of ink that blooms wider and wider, blotting out the heresy beneath it. She prays the prioress will see only the blot, not the words. Her heart hammers against her ribs, each beat a fist demanding escape. The prioress steps closer, and the smoke of her lamp coils in the air, framing the girl's face in a halo of gray. She lays her gloved hand upon the manuscript, fingers heavy, claiming it. The skin of the parchment ripples under her touch, as though recoiling. A crow calls outside, harsh and sudden. Its cry shatters the silence like glass. The girl flinches. The prioress does not. Her eyes, sharp as pins, rest on the novice, seeing not the girl, but the weight of her disobedience. The crow's wings beat against the air, fading into the distance, leaving behind only the faint echo of freedom. The candle nearest the novice gutters. Its flame bends low, threatening to die, before straightening again with a hiss. In that moment of dimness, she feels the veil press tighter around her skull, a hood that blinds and suffocates. The words she has written burn in her mind, the true light in the heart. She wants to believe them. She needs to. Yet the parchment has betrayed her. It always does. The page remembers when the mouth must remain silent. The prioress lifts the sheet slowly, folds it once, then again, her gloves smearing the fresh ink. The words vanish into creases, swallowed into the body of the vellum. She tucks it beneath her sleeve without a word. Then she turns and leaves, her steps receding, her shadow shrinking from the page. The door closes with a heavy thud, and the chamber returns to its candlelit hush. The novice exhales, a sound she did not know she was holding. Her hands still shake. The quill lies abandoned, its tip broken by her grip. She stares at the empty space on the desk where the manuscript had been, and for a moment she feels as though part of her own flesh has been torn away. Without the words, she is only silence. Without the silence, she is only danger. She rises, her knees stiff from hours of stillness, and walks toward the window. The bars slice the pale sky into narrow strips. Beyond them, the olive trees sway, their leaves silver in the dawn light. She presses her forehead against the cold iron, her breath fogging the metal. Somewhere out there, beyond the walls, the world still breathes in its own rhythm. Soil tilled, bread baked, water drawn. She tastes the memory of warm milk, the sound of cattle shifting in stalls. It feels impossibly distant now, as though she has already died. The bell tolls. Its sound is low, mournful, the bronze voice that summons obedience. It seeps through her skin, crawling down her spine. She knows it calls her to prayer, to kneel in the chapel and chant words that will scrub the heart clean of doubt. But the words she copied still glow behind her eyes, searing. She cannot wash them away. She turns back to the desk. The candle smokes, the ink pot reflects the faint light like a black mirror. She sees her face in it, pale, veiled, and trembling. For an instant, she wonders if she has already been written into the ledgers of the damned, if her name is waiting in a list somewhere, ink drying beside it. Her hand hovers above the quill again, though there is nothing left to copy. She grips it anyway, needing to feel its weight, its sharpness, the way it can turn silence into permanence. A single word escapes her lips, so soft it is barely breath. Light. The sound disappears into the vault, devoured by stone. But for her, it is enough. Somewhere beneath the monastery, chains rattle, and a man cries out. The sound slices through her fragile calm, reminding her that words are not the only thing that bind. She closes her eyes. The cry fades. What follows is only silence, and in that silence she feels the veil grow heavier on her head. The candle sputters. The room exhales smoke. The novice lowers the quill and waits, knowing the path of her life has already bent, knowing that her silence will not save her forever. And as the bell's echo dissolves into the morning, the silence draws her forward toward the darker chambers beneath, where stone will remember her just as it has remembered every shadow before her. The oaken door groans, half splintered by damp and years of hands that pushed it open with dread. Beyond, the courtyard waits, drenched in moonlight, its stones filmed with frost that gleams like a veil of glass. The air is raw, sharp as steel drawn against whetstone, and every breath hangs like a cloud of confession. Torches gutter in their sconces, smoke smearing the night, shadows jerking and twisting as though the walls themselves wish to flee. A procession shuffles forward. Shackled ankles scrape the cobbles, chains dragging like the tail of some wounded beast. The smell comes first, rotting straw clinging to garments, sweat turned sour in cold air, the faint tang of spilled ale crusted in cloth from feasts that feel centuries gone. Their eyes do not lift. Each step is heavy, each footfall a nail. Among them stands a merchant. His cloak, once lined with fur, is ragged now, threads dangling like torn sinew. He had spoken in markets with the smooth tongue of one who dealt in silks and spices, words as sweet as honey poured from a comb. Now his mouth tastes of dust, his lips cracked with thirst. He remembers Aragon, the tiled roofs glowing amber at dusk, his daughter's laughter rising above the chatter of fountains. He remembers coins clinking like bells in his purse, the aroma of cinnamon, the tang of dried figs. Here, in the courtyard's chill, memory mocks him, a feast laid before a starving man. The guards prod them forward with the butt of spears. Iron heels ring against stone, the sound flat and final. The merchant stumbles, his fingers closing around a small lump beneath his tunic. A carved wooden dove, smoothed by childish hands, a gift pressed into his palm by his daughter before the night he was taken. Its wing rests against his heart now, pressing as if to remind him that something of innocence clings still. He squeezes it until the wood cuts his palm. Above, an owl hoots, soft but startling, wings beating air heavy with frost. Its cry arcs over the courtyard like a warning. Some prisoners lift their heads to listen. The merchant's gaze follows the sound, and for a heartbeat the night opens. He sees not chains, but the shimmer of stars, not the torches, but the silver glow of the moon. His heart aches with a hunger deeper than bread, for a sky unbroken by walls. The line halts at the far gate. The door there is iron-bound, its hinges thick with rust, but it holds the weight of centuries. When it opens, the moan it releases is not mechanical. It is alive, ancient, weary of swallowing souls. The prisoners are funneled toward it, the air inside colder still, a breath from Earth's depths. The merchant hesitates, his eyes catching on the dove once more. In the torchlight, its shadow leaps across his chest, wings outstretched as if it could lift him free. He whispers, not words of plea, but his daughter's names, syllables that tremble like candles in a draught. The guard shoves him. The dove's wing vanishes into the folds of wool. The moon trembles behind a veil of cloud, dimming as if unwilling to watch. The merchant steps through the threshold, the groan of the gate echoing like a sigh. The courtyard empties, torches hissing, their light shrinking back into themselves. The owl calls again, but softer now, as though mourning. And in the silence that follows, the courtyard is once more a stage of shadows and frost, waiting for the next procession, waiting to drink the breath of those who dare to walk where stone and night are stronger than flesh. The archive sleeps beneath the monastery, like a lung filled with dust. Its air is thick, stale with centuries of parchment, the musk of vellum gnawed by worms, the sour tang of candle fat melted and remelted until it stains the stones. Rows of shelves sag beneath the weight of bindings, each volume a coffin of names. The silence here is not absence, it is watchfulness. It presses against the ear, broken only by the faint sigh of pages shifting when the air stirs. A scribe bends over a ledger, his quill whispering across skin scraped thin and pale. The ink pools darkly, metallic in its sheen, carrying the scent of iron. He copies without pause, transcribing the list of expenses for an inquest, cords purchased for restraint, oil for lamps, wine to soothe the interrogators' throats, bread for the gaolers. Even the straw that fills the cells is accounted for, each stalk reduced to a number. Between these tallies lie names, widows, shepherds, cobblers, people now nothing more than debts written in a hand that does not tremble. The scribe's fingers linger on one line, a widow's name. 30 ducats paid after her confession, money torn from land already barren, children already hungry. The ledger records it with the same care given to candles or rope. He closes his eyes. Behind the darkness, he sees her face as it must have been, creased with years, lined by grief, lips cracked by cold. He imagines her voice breaking as she begged for mercy. He imagines her silence when the ropes were removed, the quiet that filled the chamber as her body sagged, not from relief, but from defeat. He opens his eyes quickly, as though the thought itself might stain the page. The torch sputters nearby, casting a trembling light. Shadows of books lean long across the wall, as if the dead themselves crowd forward to read what has been written. The parchment under his hand feels warm, almost alive, and he withdraws as though burned. For a moment he believes he hears a whisper, a name half-spoken, or a sob rising through the ink. His heart hammers, and he clutches the quill tighter. But there is only silence again, thick and absolute. He rises, carrying the ledger toward the window barred with iron. Through it, the night leans in, silvered by moonlight. Beyond, an owl circles, its wings spread wide, eyes like coins that see what men choose not to. The bird perches on the sill outside, its talons scraping the stone. It does not blink. The scribe freezes, the ledger heavy in his arms. For a moment, it feels as though the owl has come to witness, to demand he read the names aloud, to keep them from being swallowed forever by ink and neglect. He cannot. His voice withers in his throat. The ledger presses against his chest like a tombstone. He closes his eyes and listens. The rattle of chains far below, the muted weeping of someone dragged to confession, the creak of wood that carries more than weight. It carries despair. Each sound threads through the silence, weaving a tapestry of suffering that the books will never hold. He places the ledger back on its shelf. Dust falls like ash, settling on his sleeves, in his hair. He knows it will coat his tongue as well, that the silence itself will seep into him. His footsteps echo as he retreats, the sound swallowed almost immediately. Behind him, the rows of ledgers remain, silent but alive, each one breathing softly in the dark. At the threshold, he pauses. The barred window gleams with moonlight, the owl gone now, leaving only its absence. The scribe inhales the chill, the iron tang of ink still clinging to his lungs. He feels the silence at his back, vast and endless, pressing him forward into the deeper corridors of the monastery. And as he steps away, he knows the silence is not passive. It waits, it listens, it carries every name, every cost, every ash of confession, and it will follow him, thread into him, until his own name finds its way onto the pages he now tends.